Thank you, and good morning, members, and welcome to this first meeting of the Communities Committee following the local government elections last month. And I would particularly like to welcome those elected members who are on the committee for the first time, as well as those who are returning. Before we deal with the business this morning, I'd wish to acknowledge the work of the previous committee chair, Andy Ferguson, and the previous vice chair, John Martin. Andy was an effective chairman who always ensured he kept the business moving along swiftly, and I hope to do so as well. Could I remind members the meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the council website for public listening. Could members also follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off their video when you're not addressing the meeting? Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write speak in the Teams chat function, and you will be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we deal with the business as efficiently as possible. And the usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. And if any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or you could write leave in the Teams chat function and then join, and this will allow us to monitor member presence. And it's in a way of assisting Councillor Dennerley, who has to read papers and watch his BSL interpreter during debate, can I ask you to get your mouth as close to the microphones as possible. Also try and slow down, because Councillor Dennerley has to read the papers and watch his BSL translator as well. And this will help move the participation by him on this committee. John, can I ask you if once we have finished our report, give us a thumbs up to say that you're happy to move on.
Okay, yeah, thanks for raising those points, and I appreciate you respecting my participation in this meeting. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, John. We'll now move on to item 1, which is the sediment apologies and chair's approval of members' remote participation. Claire, can you provide the sediment indicating who is participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Got one apology this morning from Councillor Howie. For the benefit of all those on Teams, we have 7 members present in the Council Hall this morning, being Councillors Dennerley, Drysdale, Ferguson, Johnston, Little, Mail and Stitt. All other members are participating on Teams. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. And I confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. Thank you, members. Are there any declarations of interest? I take it there's none. Thank you. We'll then move on to item 3, which is a delegation to Community Committee, report by the Head of Governance and Assurance. This report provides information on the delegation to this committee as agreed by full council. Vlad Valiente is available to take any questions on this report. Are there any questions on this report? Your pre-training must have been good, Vlad. Obviously, the situation is that in the last couple of meetings that I've been in, there hasn't been any questions. So members will go to the recommendations, which is we are asked to note the remit of the Communities Committee. Are we happy to do so?
Happy to note.
Thank you. We'll then move on to item 4, Communities Committee appointments to outside bodies, report by Head of Governance and Assurance. And this report seeks approval by the Communities Committee for appointment of elected members to specified outside bodies in accordance with the Council scheme for representation on outside bodies. Vlad is here again, available to take any questions on this report, with Tracy Sonka also in attendance to answer any specific questions. Is there any members willing to ask any questions? I believe that the administration has a slate on this. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, can I come in, please, Chair?
Yeah, please, Andy.
Okay, we have a slate there. I've left copies with the governance officer, but I can read them through just now if that's helpful to everybody.
Yes, please, specifically for Councillor Denham. Yeah,
okay, that's good. Happy to do that for John and for everyone else. So, in terms of Glasgow Prestwick Airport, the Consultative Committee is one. We've got a member nominated, Emma Jordan, but we have no substitute member at this stage. For the South West Scotland Community Rail Partnership, Councillor Ben Dashper. For the West Coast Rail 250, Councillor Kim Lowe. For the Wind Farm Regeneration Wide Fund Management Committee, Kim Lowe with Emma Jordan as our substitute. And then for the Scottish Council's Committee on Radioactive Substances, or ESCORS, Archie Dryborough, and of course there's no substitute member required for that. And that's the slate, Archie. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks to Councillor Blake for coming along to the pre-meeting and discussing this, and your email, Ian, confirming there was no takers on any of this. Are there any alternatives? So, members, can we move to the recommendations then, from 2.1 to 2.5 to agree to appoint those elected members?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We'll then move on to item number 5, which is the Communities Revenue Budget Monitoring Report 21-22 for the period ended 31st of March 2022. Report by Interim Director, Communities. This report provides members with the final outturn information in relation to the Communities Service Budget for 21-22, including details of the continuing financial implications of the COVID-19 emergency response and subsequent recovery. There is a clerical error in paragraph 3.16 and 3.17, which have the same title of Progress Against Agreed Policy Development Allocations. 3.17 should read Utilisation of Underspend. Gillian Ross is available on Teams to take any questions on this report, with the Director and Heads of Service also in attendance to answer any specific question. Sean, have you got anything to add to the report, or Gillian? You're on mute.
Thank you, Archie. So nothing for me. Happy to take questions that come in.
Thank you. Gillian, anything?
Nothing for myself, Archie. Just to say that obviously the finance officer for communities is suffered a bereavement, so it's at a funeral today, which is why myself standing in, and also to indicate to members that Kasia, who's also here today, will be the new finance officer for communities when Mrs McQuiston is looking to retire later this year. So she's here to help in terms of the process as well.
Thanks, Gillian. Please send our condolences to Caroline, and welcome, Kasia. We'll look forward to working with you in the future. Members, any questions? Councillor McCammon?
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, members. It was just for clarification or on point 2.3, recommendation 2.3 and Appendix 3. I note that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 allocations. So first of all, the transfer of the underspend, I agree. The allocation, however, of specific projects, I appreciate there are projects there that are regional wide, but there appears to be an unfair balance, shall we say, between the east and west. As far as I can see, there is one in the west that is getting a part of this share, this transfer, and that's Dromore Harbour in the west. But there are 5 specifics to the east. Can I just ask how the allocation was prioritised, please?
Okay.
Yeah, Gillian, please come in.
Yep. Thank you, Archie. So just to confirm, the allocations that are in the first column are the amounts that have been carried forward from the previous financial year. The allocation for this year is the 428, which is shown at the very bottom of the table, and is the amounts that are available to disburse going forward. So the previous amounts are historic and are based on the allocations that have been agreed from prior years. So they usually represent funds or resources that have been underspent in prior years and have been committed and agreed by the committee at that point in time in relation to those specific initiatives. However, what we should advise at this stage is that there is a review of service reserves currently underway. That's reflected within the council-wide report that will be coming forward to the FPT committee next week. And as part of that review, we will be looking at the priorities within each service committee, looking to make sure that those are representative of needs and the requirements for the service going forward. So there will be that opportunity to review the allocation of reserves and make sure that they're committed to the service's purposes going forward. So that will be undertaken as part of this. This simply reflects the historic amounts that have been reflected in previous years, plus the amount of additional resources that will be made available to the service in the new year as well.
Jackie, are you happy with that, or do you want to come back?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm in FPT now, so I'll review it, revisit it there. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie. Vice Chair.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair, and good morning, everyone. It was just on the Radio Hill sites on page 16. I mean, at the beginning of 2022-23, it was nigh on £1 million. I believe that we are making inroads with the invoices, etc. But I'm just wondering, is there any update on that particular item in the agenda?
Who's going to answer that one? Harry, is it? Sean?
Sean, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So I can give you the update as it stands at this time of them. So we've issued invoices to CITL, the amount highlighted in the report, and to date we've received just over £80,000 of the initial invoice. The information that I've received from Governance and Assurance, and Vlad is here to confirm this if needs be, is that they're prepared to, they will pay the rest of the invoice once all of the documents have been signed, so all the contracts have been signed. Once we've dealt with that part of it, then we'll move on to the other companies that need to be invoiced, and that will enable us to recover the rest of the money. Harry and Vlad are here if we need to add any more information to that.
Thanks very much for that update. Can I just pick up on another item, Chair, if that's okay? Page 15, we had the underspend of 36k for the community planning and engagement services, and I'm looking at table 2 on page 17, where we had a loss of income for burials. I'm just wondering, are the registrars back to full capacity? Have we got an update on that as well, please?
So, Vlad, you had your hand up there. Was that for the previous question? And Harry, you can do the burial one.
Yeah, basically just to confirm what Sean has alluded to in terms of the process here for the Radio Hill site in particular, and I'll not answer the other question. In terms of the Radio Hill site, is yeah, we have recovered some monies which Sean has referred to. We're in the process of finalising a number of other agreements that will lead to that further recovery from that particular company, and then thereafter will continue to discuss and negotiate with the other companies. But I think we're making significant tracks on that, and you'll start seeing the monies coming in.
Okay, thank you. Harry, you want to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, just in response to the question in relation to registrars, yeah, can absolutely confirm that our registration service is across birth, deaths and indeed marriages are now absolutely working to full capacity. Just to set a bit of context, in terms of burial income, that's where families choose to go down the burial route as opposed to the cremation route. So they're almost, for the purpose of the exercise, are two distinct services. So we register a death, and families obviously then decide how they wish to proceed on that basis. And certainly, as many parts of the country have found, there has certainly been an increased approach to cremations as opposed to burials. Hence why the reduction in burial income. But certainly registration services is very much back to capacity, and at section 3.7 of the report, it mentions about the number of marriage registrations in our region, which in comparison to last year, we're seeing a jump of about 40%, and that seems to be retained at the moment, which obviously is very good, very positive from an income generation perspective. Thanks, Chair. Hopefully that answers the question, Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, it's been very helpful. Thanks, Chair.
Stephen, did you want to come in there?
Thanks, Chair. Yes. Just the burial service sits within roads and infrastructure, and just to say that we, in terms of the shortfall, within the budget there's an allocation for an income assumption year on year to support the budget, but that shortfall, as Harry has said, was due to a reduced number of layer purchases and interments compared to previous years within the burial service, so that there's possibly an ongoing issue there in terms of a budget pressure that we will track.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much. We've got Councillor Little and then Councillor Jim Dempster.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. My point is on page 16, point 3.8. It's regarding the cost pressures within the school transport as a result of the significant increase in the number of ASN pupils requiring transport. Will we be receiving a further report on this? And also, it says it's increased 236 pupils in 2019 to 20 to 280 pupils in 21 to 22. Do we have pupil numbers for 22 to 23 yet?
So who's going to answer that one? Harry?
Thanks, Chair. Yep, the situation is that our transport service receive requests from colleagues in school services for young people that qualify and meet the criteria. It's very clear from a legislative perspective where additional support needs transport is required, and then we then commission the appropriate transport to do that. So it's something that we are working closely with our colleagues in school services on, and quite happy to give a little bit more detail in terms of the projections and the impact of that in future budget reports. And what I would say is that so far this academic year, the numbers that require that specialist transport have increased again, but quite happy to give the specifics when we come back to members to provide that additional detail. So as members will appreciate, the nature of the service very much has got to be customised to suit the individual young person, and it can range from quite specialist support, including another member of staff to help with that transport as well as the driver. So it might just be one young person in one vehicle. So clearly there needs to be a very robust assessment done by our colleagues in school services, and the exact requirements from a transport point of view is then passed to us to ensure it happens on a daily basis, and it's reviewed regularly to make sure that that type of support and transport requirement is in place. But quite happy to give members more details in subsequent reports, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. Tracy, happy with that?
Very happy, Chair. Thanks. Thanks, Harry.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Archie. Thanks, Chair. Just an observation, if you like, on burial grounds. If my memory serves me well, some time ago we decided not to sell layers in advance of folk looking to do an interment. And although it probably wouldn't alter the eventual income of the department, it might be worth considering selling layers again. That may well give us an early increase in income that would help address budget shortfall. It wouldn't change the overall picture, but it would allow folk to buy layers and it would give an early injection of cash. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that comment. Harry, Steve, you want to respond to that?
Yes, Chair. And can see the point that's been made by Councillor Dempster. I think the balance of that is that if we the pre-purchase of layers within the burial grounds can actually mean the capacity is reduced a lot quicker, and then we're moving towards a kind of capital replacement cost, an extension or a new site. So it is a bit of a balance in terms of income generation, but actually managing the capacity within the existing burial grounds. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks. Pauline, you want to come in?
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, members. This is possibly one for Harry, but I'm not sure. It could be possibly for yourself, Sean. With regards to page 23, carriageway defect repairs, we're seeing policy development trends on page 23 where we're hearing about procurement difficulties due to the cost inflation with regards to carriageways and procurement. Could you possibly look to bring a report to the next committee? I don't know if that's possible, Chair, just to update us as to how procurement is progressing, because we're all aware of the delays that are in place at present due to the procurement problems. Thank you very much.
If I can come in on that, Pauline, my intention was to do a further recommendation, item number 7, to have both a seminar and a report back on where we are with reporting, for instance, road defects from cradle to the grave sort of thing. What's the costing, what's the process and all that sort of thing. So if you don't mind, I'll leave that to item number 7 where we can get a recommendation on that.
Happy with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Andy Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. I'm actually just talking about 314, the bottom of table 2. It's the very last paragraph. It's actually the last sentence that I'm more interested in, about the leisure and sport currently undertaking a review of customer user trends, income generation and cost to deliver activities within facilities across the region. And I suppose it's a bit of a plea here that for this, not to use some of the tried and tested methods of scoring this, because we have a number of large-scale events where we have quite a small number of participants, but the number of spectators can be huge. And the danger here is if we only use the participants as a measure of the public's engagement with the exercise, then we're not actually given the true picture. So I suppose it's a plea as to, can we make sure that we take into account events that might have a couple of hundred spectators but might attract thousands of participants, and maybe up to or over 1,000 spectators into an event. The events I'm thinking about, for example, are Trophy de Coste at the Ice Bowl, some of the cycling events, stuff like that, where the number of participants is really quite a small percentage of those who actually watch and enjoy what's happening.
Harry, you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Ferguson highlights an important consideration that I think when we're looking at the true impact and the overall cost-benefit analysis of leisure and sport, festivals and events in the widest sense, we need to look beyond the more traditional approaches that simply looks at attendances, and as has been mentioned, it may well be that the actual physical attendances to participate in an event is relatively small, but the reach goes far beyond that in terms of profile, spectators, very often now media coverage when it comes to some of the significant cycling events we're getting. So absolutely, we're working very closely with colleagues in economic development, for example, to understand the true impact and probably the more far-reaching impacts that comes out of this service. So we'll obviously make sure that that's appropriately featured in our considerations and information that's brought back to members. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Andy, you happy with that?
Very happy, thank you.
Okay, David English.
Hi, good morning, Chair. Thank you. Just a quick question on page 25. I see DG1, £162,000 has been transferred into this year for replacement of gymnastic equipment and one or two other bits and pieces. I'm just wondering, Chair, whether we can get a full report on DG1 and how it's progressed since it was reopened again. I understand that COVID comes into that, but it'd be interesting to know just exactly how it's been performing and what sort of expense we've incurred on that building since we opened it again.
Before I bring you in, Harry, David, if you're happy, I'll have a word with Ian and all the sort of the guys who were leading their groups to see a future sort of calendar of reports coming forward. I think the DG1 one would be happy. But Harry, you want to come in on that particular thing?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, the review that Councillor Ferguson mentioned in the last question very much includes the operation of DG1, and absolutely be very happy at the right time when we've got that level of detail to look to bring forward information in terms of usage levels, projected usage levels, changing customer behaviours, etc. And certainly, as you've said, Councillor England, COVID has certainly impacted the leisure sector significantly. But I firmly believe there are also opportunities to take from that I think the positive impact that leisure, culture, well-being in its widest sense has in people's mental well-being as opposed to just physical well-being is now well cited, and we're working with colleagues, for example, in health to demonstrate how a more creative use of these types of services can be put to better effect. So yeah, quite happy to for any member that's interested, speak offline about it, but equally bring it forward in a more formal, structured approach so members understand the impact that type of facility is having on our communities. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, I think I fully understand, Harry, and I appreciate that that view of this. My main concern is the building fabric itself and how it's standing up following the renovations and any other costs that's involved in bringing it up to scratch. It would just be interesting to get a clear picture. Elected members, I think, will be interested in that, given what was spent on the building to get it opened again. Thanks, Harry. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, David. I think that's clear that we'll look forward to that as well. I think it's part of the seminar, possibly, is how it's moving forward, and then potentially a future report. I can't see anybody else with their hands up, so can we go to the recommendations, members? And we are asked to note 2.1, note 2.2, and agree 2.3. Everybody happy with that? Okay, we'll then go on to item number 6, which is Dumfries and Galloway Road Safety.
Sorry, Chair, was there going to be an additional recommendation for a seminar and a report back?
That was going to go into item number 7, Claire.
Sorry, Chair.
Okay, so Dumfries and Galloway Road Safety Report by Heads of Roads and Infrastructure. The purpose of this report is to inform members of Scotland's road safety framework to 2030 and the Council's responsibilities and approach to road safety and its work in conjunction with Dumfries and Galloway Road Safety Partnership. Steve at Herry is available on Teams to take any questions on the report, with Tony Toppin also in attendance to answer any specific questions. So, member, are there any specific questions for the officers? Unless, Stephen, you've got anything to add to the report?
Chair, nothing to add to the report. Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions? Okay, thank you then. Can we go to the recommendations? We are asked to, sorry, John.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I was trying to type in speak, please, and I put spa, please. But anyway, that's the reason why the yellow hand went up. Yeah, I made an inquiry with Tony Toppin about the table 2. There was an indication of all the incidents. There was fatal, serious and slight, and the slight one was to be confirmed. He did get back to me, and I believe that it's Transport Scotland that has to release these figures, and I believe we won't get those until October 2022. I'm just wondering if Tony could maybe, if he has had anything back, he could maybe just address the committee. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Tony. You want to come in on that?
Okay, morning, Chair. Morning, members. Yes, I got that email from Councillor Campbell last night. I've since been in touch with Police Scotland. We're hoping to get some data back. Would be that we'd include it in the meeting minutes in the next week or so.
Okay, Johnny,
that's fine. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Tony.
We've got Councillor Drysdale and then Councillor Dempster.
Thanks very much, Chair. Tony, just a quick question. There used to be a video that was used across the schools. It's with regards to page 32, 3.23, the work with the youth work services, and I'm assuming this is also within the schools because it's the work delivered to young people aged 12 to 25. I'm just wondering if that road safety video is still used. My children used to refer to it quite a lot when they were at Castle Douglas High School, and it used to be a really impactful video that gave them a good wake-up call as to when they were about to sit their driving test. I just wondered if that was still in existence, Tony, or if it's been updated with any new video formats that are used within the school system. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Pauline. Of course, that would only be a couple of years ago that your kids were in school, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. You're spot on there.
Okay, Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Drysdale. That's one item I think I'll have to consult with youth work services just to see, because it's slightly out of my remit under roads and infrastructure. But I think that it may well have been updated, but there are, as you say, there's a lot of good promotional videos, etc., out there at the moment. So I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Are you happy with that, Pauline? Yeah. Okay, Jim.
Thanks, Archie, Chair. Just an observation. It's been long a consternation in my view that it's a great report, this, and it covers a whole host of issues, but when the police are assessing, or when Transport Scotland are assessing the need for major improvements in road safety, they take account of fatal and serious accidents, and they add a value to that, and that's used to justify the road improvement. But they never include road accidents. So we could have a situation, and I could mention one or two locations where there are countless accidents occurring on a fairly regular basis, but because nobody is seriously injured or there's a fatal God forbid, a fatal incident, they're not used as a means of justifying road improvements. And I find that an anomaly or something that needs to be looked at, because you shouldn't need to be badly injured or die to find out where the bad spots on a particular stretch of road are, or the justification for upgrades. And that's unless it's changed now, that was always the way of it. There had to be a serious or a fatal injury before that reflected in a report looking for upgrading parts or sections of a road. I don't know whether Tony has any thoughts on that, or whether that mechanism had changed since I was last involved in discussions about it.
Thanks, Jim. And obviously I've had words with Tony about certain areas in my ward as well about this. And it is, you know, there does seem to be a lack of information, especially where there are no police involvement and it's accident only or no injury accidents. Tony, can you help Jim out?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I think in the past, Police Scotland did try and collate all sort of damage-only accidents, and that was when they could get hold of the information. Now you only need to sort of report an accident if there has been an injury. So it's actually the collating of damage-only incidents that's quite difficult at the moment. So it's why we do focus on the sort of the deaths and the serious injuries. And I have in the past, though, consulted with Police Scotland when we've been doing our own accident investigation and prevention programme for Dumfries and Galloway. And the officers used to always report sort of when they got called out for damage only. I think it's now the reporting mechanism that Police Scotland use. The officers only need to make a formal report when there has been an injury at a specific collision. But yes, in the past we've definitely looked at hotspots of, say, damage onlys, because as you know, a damage only is just, it's just a proper serious or fatal, probably waiting to happen. But at the moment, we don't have a database for sort of damage only. So I hope that sort of provides you with some sort of explanation for the current way both Police Scotland and Transport Scotland work with regards to how they allocate funding for road safety improvement measures.
If I can back just briefly, Chair.
Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, I think, Tony, you've just underlined my understanding, and it doesn't really solve the issue. I see Councillor Lowe's got an observation in the chat here. But I wonder if there's any way we can raise that debate again with Transport Scotland and Police Scotland, because it shouldn't be difficult to collate information, especially for statutory bodies. And, you know, to use a well-coined phrase, it's only a serious accident waiting to happen if we've got 20 or 30 minor incidents and we don't bother with them because nobody's been killed so far. For me, it's just the wrong approach. Now, I've got the explanation. It confirms what my thoughts were. My thinking was maybe we should try and channel a discussion back to the decision-making bodies that you might need to look at other areas where you don't need to be killed to be able to evidence that there's something wrong at a specific location. But thanks for your time, Chair, and thanks for the response, Tony.
Thanks, Jim. I think there may be other issues under GDPR for insurance companies and things like that that we might not tell, either Transport Scotland as well. So there are huge issues here about getting information from particular organisations. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm referring to 3.10, and it's the Council Road Service Operator Communities Committee approved annual road safety programme. With that in mind, Archie, I'm wondering if whether 2.2 we should agree the roles, responsibility and contribution of the Dumfries and Galloway Council to road safety, because that would save another report having to come back. Because this report isn't asking for us to agree anything at the moment, other than the support for the ambitions of the partnership, which is different from agreeing the programme.
Thanks. I don't have any issues with changing that particular recommendation unless there's a specific one, Stevie, that you can come up with.
Yeah, I mean, the content, the methodology that Tony refers to there in his report is previously agreed at committee in terms of how we target investment on accident investigation prevention schemes. terms of the criteria of the accident clusters and the assessments that are carried out every year, plus some funding for the other kind of hotspots where it may be only damage only, but we're seeing a significant number of those, and that's approved through. So we have a process that's pre-approved by committee already, and that's what Tony's kind of reporting on. And each year in the capital programme, we will identify the schemes for approval. So we will have, in the March report, we took Communities Committee looked into this financial year and agreed how we would spend the funding under road safety within the capital programme.
And are you happy with that?
No, I'm not worried about the funding. I'm worried about the principle that the council should agree it, because we're partners, and the law requires us to agree it. It's an annual, according to 2.10, Communities Committee approved annual road safety programme. Now, that was about how we were going to do it. What I'm saying here is, if we agree, put the word agree in there rather than note the roles, responsibilities, then we are giving the officers another full year to work again from now. Given as well that was a previous administration, and I do appreciate that carries forward, but should we not think about changing that to agree? That's only a suggestion. I'm happy to be, if everybody thinks I'm the lone voice in this, but I think it should be agree.
I'm just looking at that particular recommendation, Andy, and it's a roles, responsibility and contribution of Dumfries and Galloway Council Road Safety, paragraphs 3.8 to 3.2, and it's contribution may change every year. That's the only thing. So if we agree to it now, we might put more into it next year, but we've already agreed, if you know what I mean, as part of this report. As Stephen has said, there'll be an annual report coming for the contribution of the performance for roads every year. I'm neither up nor down about it, to tell you the truth, but are you happy with that explanation that this will come every year, specifically about the contribution more than anything else?
Yeah, I was actually more interested in the roles and responsibilities. The contribution comes in terms of budget and how we take the service forward. But that should be guided by the roles and responsibilities set out in statute.
Yeah, I would maybe suggest when we come to the recommendations that we agree the roles and responsibilities and note the contributions of Dumfries and Galloway, if that would be a way moving forward.
I'd be happy with that, Archie, thank
you. Okay. I can't see any other members coming in, so therefore can we go to the recommendations, members? It's note 2.1. 2.2 is a change in that we agree the roles and responsibilities and note the contribution of Dumfries and Galloway Council to road safety in the paragraph 3.8 to 3.24. At 2.3 we note. At 2.4 we note. At 2.5 we note. At 2.6 we agree the council support for the road safety ambitions, and 2.7 we note the road safety funding opportunities available through the Transport Scotland to help deliver the commitments. Are we happy with that? Doesn't seem any be dissent, so I'm happy with that, and we'll move on to item number 7, which is the Public Realm Capital Programme 2021-22 Outturn Report by the Head of Roads and Infrastructure. This report provides members with a financial and progress summary for the projects and programmes contained within the 2021-22 Public Realm Asset Class Capital Programme. It is of note that due to varying circumstances outside the control of the service, programmes have not been completed within the year. Therefore, the report also details amendments to the 2022-23 Public Realm Asset Class Capital Programme. Stephen Herriot's available on Teams to take any questions on the report with William Neal, also in attendance to answer any specific questions. But members, before we go on to any things, I would like to put in as part of the recommendations that we hold a seminar on all of the communities direct services, and also we will have a report on the action plan to improve the road service at the September committee. and we'll move forward from there once we get to the recommendations. Stephen, have you got anything to add to the report?
I do, Chair, thank you. Just a bit of an update since we published the report. At paragraph 4.37, we talk about the strategic timber transport schemes, and we had a couple of bids in to that funding through Forestry Scotland, and we've been successful in one of those bids. We've still to have the kind of written confirmation, and we will kind of provide details in the next capital monitoring report to committee. But we're looking at funding of about 270,000 from the Timber Transport Fund to the C27W road in Wigton to do works there after there was a certain damage to the road from the kind of forestry movements to improve the strength of that road. And we'll come back to committee and just get the formal approval to accept that grant and to add some co-funding to it from the Council's capital programme. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. We'll look forward to that coming forward. So we have Councillor Dempster and then Councillor Campbell.
Hey, thanks again, Chair. Just a couple of questions then, an observation. Question is, one of them on page 58, what does reprofiling Dumfries Cemetery actually mean? Another question is, on a lot of the reports, 58, 59, it talks about historic framework rates in Q3 and Q4, but doesn't actually say what they are. So I would hope that was somehow been resolved, given the number of times they're repeated in the report. And I wouldn't dream of introducing local issues in a strategic committee, but there are a number of outstanding works in my ward, and I'm sure right across the region, that have been waiting for 3 years now, or between 2 and 3 years. So the observation is, I hope that we'll try and give them some attention, Chair, and that they'll not be cascaded again into a following year, especially in some of the more sensitive sections of the report. So I'll write to Stephen directly on 1 or 2 local issues, but that's just an observation. I would hope that the outstanding works that have been outstanding for a number of years get some kind of priority through this financial year, especially when the funds are committed to them. Thanks for that, Chair.
Thanks. Stephen, can you answer the original questions on quarters?
Yep. Happy to do that, Chair. Thank you. Yes, we talk about reprofiling the funding for Dumfries Cemetery. If maybe cast the mind back for those that were in Communities Committee before, the first year of COVID impacts, we had slippage across the corporate council and the capital investment strategy, and there was a certain amount of capital that we could bid into, and we bid into funding for the complete cost to deliver the Dumfries Cemetery works, and we brought that into our own kind of funding, and it took the pressure off the land asset class part of the funding at that time. So it's holding on to that funding, reprofiling it into the years to match the programme when we will deliver the cemetery works. So that's the kind of the first question. We mentioned historic framework rates, and that part of the reason for slippage. And there was significant slippage last financial year across the council, and the slippage figures in this report for the public realm asset class, principally the kind of works within roads and infrastructure for the assets in the public realm. The level of slippage it's been repeated across the council in terms of the kind of magnitude of slippage, and it has been corporate issues in terms of resources and in terms of contractors. The issue with the framework rates, we started to try and resolve that when it became apparent that it was a problem towards the end of last financial year. We're still working on that, but effectively we're doing a lot more work with our procurement team colleagues in terms of looking at framework rates we have with contractors almost on a monthly basis, and looking at construction indices to look at appropriate uplifts related to materials costs, so that we can get contractors effectively signing up to contracts for works to be taken forward. And we kind of manage that with a lot more work with procurement and renegotiation of rates with contractors to be able to deliver. In terms of outstanding works, anything that was slipped from last year, generally, particularly within the roads programme, we captured that within the March committee report for approval in this financial year. But if there are other schemes that Councillor Dempster thinks have been committed to in committee in the past that we haven't delivered on, we can check that against previous committee agreements on projects and make sure there's nothing has fallen off the list. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Chair. That was really helpful. Can I come in with a wee supplementary?
Go on then, Jim.
That reprofile 135k, is that part of the 960 or £1 million that was set aside for the Dumfries Cemetery? And if it is, I was going to save this for another day, but I might as well ask it now. The director, and I realise he's got far greater issues on his plate at the moment, the interim director or interim chief executive, but he undertook to bring forward a report on how we would fund all cemeteries across the region based on the £906,000 set aside for Dumfries. And I think that was a very good piece of work. It set a standard that I would hope would be replicated, and I'm hoping that report will come forward at some stage in this year when the director returns. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Stephen, you want to come in on that?
Yep, I think, absolutely here and capture that action in terms of looking at forward investment on cemeteries and understanding. I mean, it is a significant investment for the council when we need to build something completely new for a sizable urban area. It's also a reasonable investment where we need to extend existing cemeteries. But yes, I think we could bring a report this year on our assessment of capacity within burial grounds and what that might mean going forward for future funding, either as priority projects or out of the asset class. I just wonder if I could maybe bring in Nicholas Simpson, if you were able just to clarify the figure, the 135 in Table 1, or whether we just will come back to Councillor Dempster with the absolute detail on that in relation to the total funding for Dumfries Cemetery.
Hi, Nicola, you there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, that is part of the 900,000 that was set aside for this project in the past.
Okay, happy with that, Jim?
Oh, absolutely delighted, Chair. Thanks very much, and thanks everybody for your response. That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so we've got Councillor John Campbell, Councillor Pauline Drysdale, Councillor Dougie Campbell, and then Councillor Ian Blake. So, John?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I'm content with the report, and I'm happy with you putting forward a further recommendation, for a seminar and action plan and bringing more information back to the committee. Just a couple of questions on page 62 with the flood risk management programme for Newton Stewart. I'm just wondering, is there an expected date for repairs to be completed? And are we on track for publishing the Newton Stewart flood scheme this year? Thanks, Chair.
Stephen?
Yep, and the answer to the second part, yes, I understand we are on track for publication within this year. I'd need to come back just with the detail on the timeline for the kind of advanced works on the bank protection, but we'll come back to you on that, Councillor Campbell.
Okay, John. Pauline?
Thanks very much, Chair. Firstly, Stephen, I'd like to congratulate you on your success in achieving the funding from the timber transport across the region. I'm sure colleagues in the west of the region will be delighted, so well done. I am going to be slightly parochial, and I think it's only fair that I do that because on page 73, could you just clarify for us today why in the Stewartry the only spend that's happened so far is in St Andrews Drive and Castle Douglas? Is there a reason for the delays for the spend on the public realm asset class capital projects for the remainder of the projects in the Stewartry? Thanks very much, Stephen. Thanks, Chair.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to bring Stuart Cavan in.
Stuart? Unmute yourself. Stuart, unmute yourself.
Sorry, guys. The issue that we've got with the delivery of the public realm at the moment is actually through the procurement process as Stephen alluded to, we're doing a lot of work with procurement colleagues to sort the issues that we've got with the historic framework rates. We're having meetings, as Stephen says, every month at the moment. We're currently doing a wee pilot scheme with procurement on relaxing the rates and the ceiling levels we have in the rates, and we've taken some of the asset class on the planned structural overlays for the stewardship to procurement to see if they agree the rate increases through a very recent process that just completed last week. And we're waiting on feedback on that. So we're looking to progress the schemes as soon as possible if we can get agreement from colleagues from procurement and working with our suppliers as well.
Only you want to come back in?
Thank you very much, Chair. That's great. Thank you very much for the update. Do you think you could send us in the West region an update on that once it's been decided, just so that we're kept abreast of developments? Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Sure.
Certainly, yes. We'll update members on the progress of that procurement exercise in the pilot scheme.
Thank you. Dougie Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. It's more of a query for myself. A previous Communities Committee asked a question about some flooding on Station Street in Stranraer. The road was flooded and a number of houses in that street were also flooded. It's possibly a misunderstanding on my part in terms of it not qualifying for the Public Realm Capital Programme, but I couldn't see any reference to Station Street. Could you maybe clarify, has that project been completed or is it being reported somewhere else? Thank you, Chair.
Who's coming in on that one then? Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the project the Stranraer Flood Protection Scheme and the kind of residual works packages to be completed on that. We are progressing with the design and the delivery in this year on those kind of final completion of those works packages. It's actually a discrete line within the Council's capital investment strategy as one of the flood protection schemes, and it attracts 80%, up to 80% co-funding from Scottish Government. So it's not reported fully in terms of finance in this capital monitoring report for the public realm asset class, but it is covered within the reporting to FPT, and certainly we report to Communities Committee as part of the package of flood protection schemes on the progress on them as well as the costs. We've had to do, particularly Station Street and Stranraer, just checking with our engineering colleagues this morning, we've had to do a bit more topographical survey on the extent of the land that we're going to sacrificially flood, the land that we purchased in that location, and we've had to extend the ground investigation to inform the design for the solution at that location, and that will take place through this summer in terms of reinforcing the design. But we have been in touch and we've got the appropriate approvals secured with SEPA and with Network Rail because it impacts on one of the railway embankments. And we also have, for kind of events, we have interim measures in place where we can block the culvert and actually sacrificially flood the land upstream to protect Station Street. So we have interim measures in place, and we're also progressing with the design of the permanent works at that location, Councillor.
You happy with that, Dougie?
Yeah, that's very thorough. Thanks, Stephen.
And I'm sure Jim Dempster will be pleased to hear that because you had a question earlier on, and I'm sure Councillor Scobie will get the question from him. We have Ian Blake now.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I go into the point I was going to raise, if we could go back to the question from Councillor Drysdale. Stuart gave an explanation on the fact that work has not been completed in some of the areas. I still would like to kind of press, why is this really just stewardship, and where the other three areas seem to be fairly well progressed?
All right, Councillor Blake. Yes, I can. The explanation for that was, unfortunately, with the staff changes within the stewardship office, we've had new 3 members of that office just last year, so we're slightly behind the game preparation works for the works within the statutory area. We had the team leader, Bob Green, retired at the beginning of the financial year, who actually had a lot of the information himself. So the guys were playing catch up within the office. They very quickly tried to get on top of everything, but with the issues of procurement and hyperinflation from November through to February, it was about 3.5 months where we were really struggling to procure any works within our frameworks and the rates that we had set within the frameworks. So that actually caused the issues within the statutory area. That's the main reason for not being able to deliver most of the schemes in the statutory area.
Thank you. That explains it. I assume that the work there will now be prioritised because it hasn't been done.
Yes, that's correct. We've undertaken a procurement process already that was just completed in the last week, and that's what we're speaking to our colleagues in procurement around now, as the rates are beyond the ceiling levels, but this is, we're hopefully that we can agree that this is part of the pilot scheme that we're undertaking in procurement at the moment and push on with these schemes.
Right, thank you for that. Sorry, I'll now go back to my main point. Sorry, my assistant has heard something. I think I have a postman coming. Right. If I could go back to the capital programme, the concern of the slippage, I mean, the amount of slippage, 3.126 million, equates to more than 40% of that. What is that going to do to the demand on the service? Do we have the capacity to work along with that? I appreciate you said you're going to change. There's been some changes to the capital programme for this year, but will this affect the capacity that we have? And also, is this going to be year on year? Is it merely going to just push even more on next year and we'll have more slippage next year? Thank you.
Stephen?
If I could come in, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Blake, for the question on that. And in terms of the management of the slippage, we're putting measures in place that we will more frequently monitor. I mean, we know the particular reasons in terms of cost inflation and the impact that's had on contractors, and contractors being less willing to match framework rates and work with us. We've become more flexible in terms of our work with procurement and in renegotiating rates and understanding construction cost indices in relation to materials, particularly to be able to get contractors back in a competitive place to do works for us. In terms of the slippage, the 3.1 million, my understanding was that was kind of equivalent to the figures in the corporate slippage, and that there has been a kind of, particularly on the construction side, a corporate impact experienced on slippage in the capital programme. FPT committee, and I think the report indicates this, next week we'll be considering reallocating the slippage in each of the asset classes. So that would be the 3.1 million for the public realm asset class back into for Communities Committee to decide. I would propose we bring our next capital report to this next committee, and we present options on how we would use that slippage amount. And we would look at if it needs to be profiled over 1 year or 2 years. But I think in particular it probably needs to cover cost increases, and we can make an assessment of that where we have put projects in the programme at a certain cost level, but we're actually seeing contracting costs increasing and an increase in surfacing work, because that's where the kind of main impact has been in the programme, and working with our procurement colleagues to accelerate surfacing projects additional to that, which was agreed in March. And also we just talked about the award from the Timber Transport Fund. We would be looking at getting approval for some of that slippage to go against a co-contribution to that to deliver those works on the C27W.
Okay, so are you happy with that, Ian?
Yeah, Stephen, thank you for that, and Stuart also for your response. Thanks.
Thank you. Davy Stitt.
Cheers, Chair. Just want a wee query. Page 62, 4.29, surface dressing. It says a section of the road, top of the bends to 30 mile per hour at the Beatty project, which is no longer required as it is unsuitable for surface dressing due to gradients and bends and under mature trees. I should know my roads in Dalbeattie, but I just don't know that section. I find it quite hard you've got to leave a road to go into disrepair.
Stephen or Stuart?
Just bring Stuart in, thanks.
Yes, the section of carriageway we're talking about there is from the old Craignair quarry up the hill to the bend at the top of the hill, just beyond Bittle. We had a discussion on site with our suppliers as to the suitability of that site. The road itself is actually in quite good condition. It was a case of protecting that road and prolonging the life of that section of carriageway. But unfortunately, during the meeting, we decided that the treatment of surface dressing was not the correct one for that area. We will look at a further different types of treatment for the area in the future. But as it stands at the moment, it's actually not. It's in a good state of repair. It's probably not requiring any work immediately, but we'll certainly be looking at a different treatment for next financial year on that section.
Dave, you want to come back?
No, that's fine, Archie. Cheers.
Okay, members. There doesn't seem to be anybody else here, so can we go to the recommendations? We are asked to note 2.1, agree 2.2, and note 2.3 with an additional couple of recommendations. First of all, that a seminar is prepared for the Communities Directorate and all the directorates within that for members, and especially for me as I'm just coming back into communities. But also at the next September meeting, we have an update on the roads action plan. And Stephen, you suggested a report on the slippage and how we deal with that over the next year or so.
As part of the capital report, Chair, I would suggest that, yes.
Yeah. Okay, are we happy with that, members?
Councillor Drysdale.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, could you just clarify, Chair, will that include a section on procurement and any advancements with regards to that? Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Yeah, it's part of the seminar. I think what we need to understand, especially with the roads, is if there is a road defect reported, where does it go? So from cradle to grave, you know, so from the start of the report to actually fixing it, what's that decision-making process as we go through, and how do we actually get that repair done? So it's like from cradle to grave of a road defect being reported, but also, you know, the opportunities of what other repairs are available, you know, not just surface dressing as we suggested earlier on, but there are other opportunities to do road repairs as well. But that would be part of the seminar going forward, and it's not just about roads, about the other departments within the Communities Directorate as well, because there is quite a few departments within the Communities Directorate that, you know, I haven't been involved in for a number of years. So I'd just like to get that sort of updated as well. Okay. Okay, members, well, I have no further business, but can I thank you for your input and your questions. I will repeat what I said at the start. I'm hoping to be, you know, a good chair, and my door's always open if there are any questions or anything like that from any members. I intend to have pre-meetings with both the administration and the opposition prior to committees so that we can move through the business quickly. Thanks very much. I hope you have a good rest of the day and look forward to the weekend as well. So I'll close the meeting at that. Thanks, folks.
Thanks.